this week in college hockey, a double gender edition of college this week in college hockey. Our first official coverage of women's college hockey. I don't think ever in my memory have a coach from the same team and same school been fired within almost 24 hours either of each other. We have a historian here. Jess, tell me somewhere in your lifetime of covering college hockey, this has happened.
I can't think of it. I mean, keep in mind the women's college hockey era is only about
It's like
25 years
30,
old.
25, 30 years
Yeah,
old. Yeah.
yeah. So there's not a lot of examples of this, but it's interesting because I did some radio this morning, like WCCO had me on, and one of the big questions they asked was, how do you fire the women's coach and not fire the men's coach? Now I don't know if Mark Coyle was listening to those questions, but literally, like you say, within 24 hours, you've got two big job openings at two pretty nice rinks there in Minneapolis, all of which we are at right now, as you can tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm up in the club, way up in
Yeah.
the club section right now. You look like you're near the bleachers. Wow.
Yeah.
We have this basically covered, the entire rink covered right now.
I think we have two different ice sheet sizes covered as well.
I think we do.
I think we've got the old Olympic size sheet, and then we've got the
I think we do. Let me see.
hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah, I for sure have I have the new one.
Yeah, you have the new one.
I have the new one for sure.
That's right. No, this is pretty unprecedented, I would think.
Yeah.
Crazy times, and especially at a program the profile and the blue blood nature of Minnesota. Yeah. So this is the stat I came up with. University of Minnesota history. And I'm sorry, my dog is apparently chiming in for no apparent reason. University of Minnesota history. One coach has won 5 national championships. That was Bernie Bierman back in the day. I really have no idea what my dog is barking at. I apologize. Bernie Bierman, 5 national championships. The only one with 4 is Brad Frost, and he got fired yesterday. So I don't know, what the standard is. Except I said this on the radio. I think the idea is that the program had stagnated. You had reached the ceiling you were going to reach in the modern era of women's college hockey. You were the 3rd best team in the WCHA behind Wisconsin and Ohio State, and that was just where you were.
You're stuck there.
Seemingly stuck there.
Okay, so let me do story time. It looks like you led with the women's, which is fine. We'll end with the men's. So I was talking to a staff member who was on the staff last year on the women's program, and this is going to be kind of a nice Mark Coyle, throw under the bus session today. So I'll lead with the first limb of Mark Coyle's underneath the bus, and they were coaching. The previous staff was coaching in a regional game exactly like the one they had this past weekend, and Mark Coyle showed up in the second period, and they looked up. They were literally at bench level at Ritter, looked up at center ice, and they saw the athletic director, whom they've never seen before in Ritter Arena. And then they looked at each other and said, hey, could we be getting fired if we lose today? And it was just added extra pressure to the game. We're coaching and we're going first line, second line, where's Mark Coyle? First line, third line, where's Mark Coyle? Now, and they won in overtime, and Mark Coyle walked out of the building, and that was it. And so ever since I heard that story, I'm like, wow, is Brad Frost ever on the hot seat if the coaching staff's willing to tell me something like that? So when they lost on Saturday, I was like, okay, I'm looking out for the newspaper on Sunday or Monday. And Sunday and Monday didn't happen. I'm like, well, maybe that was just a tall tale from last year. Well, apparently not. Tuesday is when the official announcement came out, and obviously he wasn't at the game because Mark Coyle is not in the Twin Cities right now. And I believe I have to confirm this with probably the actual sources themselves, the people on the coaching staff. But I believe sources have revealed that Mark Coyle was not in the building for either of the dismissals of the hockey team, head coaches and coaching staff, which I think is a story in of itself.
Yeah.
Can you do that?
Yeah, that's for sure a little odd.
I mean, in COVID, you could do that because nobody was
in COVID.
Yeah,
we're all in the building, all of us. Why couldn't he be here? Yeah,
He
here we are. He could have just
in
stopped by and talked to us.
in COVID, you could have a cat mask over your face and get rid of it.
Yeah.
Get rid of an employee.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it says something about someone. And I like Mark Coyle. I've always gotten along with him. He's always been straight up with me. The thing I love about Mark Coyle, he's like a good politician. He doesn't know my name, but he pretends he knows my name. I love those guys.
That's exactly what he
where,
is.
where they come up to you and they go, "Hey, shooter," like,
Hey, big guy.
"Hey, big guy, how you doing, boss?" That guy. I like that about him.
They
And
make you feel like they really want to talk to you.
yeah, exactly. I'm not going to rip Mark Coyle. He did send his kids to the University of Iowa. I mean, Tony, you
He
and
had
I
a
are
daughter. He
Iowa,
had a daughter that went to the U.
yeah, you and I are Iowa State parents, so we can't condone
Right.
that. I mean, come on, but no, I'm not gonna blast Mark Coyle. Although there are certain things you have to do in person. My friend Bob Nygaard, who was the SID at Minnesota Duluth for 37 years. The athletic director there, when they decided to change the position and eliminate his position, whatever, he had somebody from HR call him and let him know over the phone. And I will never have anything respectful to say about that athletic director, because that's at very minimum a phone call you have to make yourself, and more likely you have to do that in person.
The press box is named after him.
It is now.
Oh, it wasn't that at the time. Right,
Quick-
obviously he was working there.
Quick
So
side note, by the way,
I want to hear this.
I went to the unveiling of the Bob Nygaard press box because Bob is truly one of my best friends. I was best man in his wedding. He was a groomsman in my wedding. We've gone back, most of our lives. We've watched our kids grow up together. So I, of course, went up to Duluth for the official unveiling of the Bob Nygaard press box. And Bob has got a great sense of humor. And the first thing he said was, "I'm glad you're all here, and I'm glad we're not announcing the Bob Nygaard Memorial press
Memorial.
box." He said it wouldn't be as much fun if there was just an urn up here.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
I digress.
All right. Back to the women's. Let's just break down what is Mark Coyle, speaking of Mark Coyle, what does he have on his hands now? I mean,
Yeah.
I believe those in the college hockey, women's college hockey world are, all pointing their fingers towards Columbus, Ohio. Nadine Muserall, former player, former coach for Brad, and has had tremendous success in Columbus with Ohio State. To me, it's the natural fit. Would they be able to come up with a package attractive enough to move her and her family back to Minneapolis to lead the Gophers back to the promised land?
I mean,
Wow.
I feel I don't.
Who wants to answer that one?
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's what everyone's kind of thinking right now.
Have any of you been to OSU ice rink?
I've seen pictures.
I've seen the pictures. We have all seen the
okay.
videos.
Bill Ritter.
Let me put
It looks like Northfield's rink that they just tore down.
No, have you been to Doug Woog Ice Arena in South St. Paul?
Which one? Yes, the nice one or the bad one?
Have you been to the auxiliary rink at Doug Woog Ice Arena?
The second rink, yeah.
Yeah. OSU ice rink is not quite that nice.
Right. It's not as nice as the original.
It's like the practice rink at the Herb.
Yeah. Yes.
There's some bleachers on one side.
Literally like football stadium visiting side of the field bleachers on one side.
Yeah.
It is an embarrassment. The Buckeyes,
and they don't have a locker room in the building. They walk across the street, correct?
The visitors' locker room is in the basement. So the visiting team goes through the lobby, down a set of stairs, and they dress in the building. The Buckeye women's team, one of the best teams in the country, maybe the best team in the country, actually walks outside across a walkway to the former basketball arena, St. John Arena, which was home of Buckeyes basketball for years and years and years. And inside the former basketball arena is a nice locker room for the women, but it's literally in a different building. They have to walk outside to get to their games through the lobby. Again, they rope off a pathway next to the popcorn vendors, and kids give them high fives and all that cool stuff. And thankfully, the walkway, number one, it has rubber, so you're not going to ruin your skates. Number two, it is covered, so if it's raining or snowing, you're not actually walking in the snow. But for
They
a program.
splurged and got a cover on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. They talked to the guy down at Home Depot and got some metal roofing, I think, and something like that. For a program like Ohio State women and what Nadine Muzerall has built them up into, and for a school like Ohio State, which has $1 billion athletic program, embarrassing. So this is my prediction. If, we've heard plenty about a new arena at Ohio State, lots of cool artist renderings, all that stuff. If in the next 48 hours they're announcing they're actually building that rink, that means they're serious about keeping Nadine Muzerall there.
Yeah.
I would think the rink and obviously the recruiting advantages of being here in Minnesota alone would be enough to attract her, plus possibly a larger salary and a greater commitment to women's hockey would be enough to attract her to come here. But we don't know. I mean, I've addressed a few of her former players at Ohio State and asked them if they would be surprised if she left. They all said they'd be surprised if she left, but they also said they wouldn't be surprised if she came here too, or stayed back in Columbus.
50-50. Yeah.
I remember reading all the reasons that Don Lucia should stay at Colorado College. So, and I had people asking me, why would Bob Motzko leave St. Cloud State? He had it so good there, and I always say he had 600,000 reasons to leave.
Yeah, it's money. It's money and power. I mean, it's power. I mean, I talk to Ben Gordon all the time. We run camps together in the summer, and he goes, I always talk about recruits. Should you go after this guy? He basically says we can get we can get whoever we want.
Mike Cerdas, the longtime coach of Minnesota Duluth, always used to say of Doug Woog, the Gophers don't recruit, they select.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing, and but it is what it is, and the same goes for the Gopher women program. When they're a top one or two team in the country, they were picking whoever they wanted. And in this case, I think, and I talk about this all the time on her ice pod, is I think the girls' development in Minnesota is backwards, and you're starting to see the other women's hockey girls and women's hockey players around the country catching up to Minnesota. And I don't think it'll take long for Nadine to change that culture here in Minnesota.
Yeah, I agree.
Let me ask this. How do we feel about the last 3-4 years of the recruiting for the Gopher women's program?
From a Minnesota standpoint?
It, to me, was an eye-opener when Johnny and Chrissy Pohl's daughter decides to be a Badger. And I don't fault any kid who wants to go to college a little, get away from home a little bit. I'm all good with that. But I do think Frost and his staff have done a nice job of recruiting internationally. Got some great players out of Canada, got some great Europeans. But I note the fact that Peyton Raleigh, Warroad's goalie, after this program has won how many state championships, that's the first Warroad player they've had since 2008 in Gigi Marvin. So I'm wondering if recruiting the local programs is suffering in favor of, let's look at Europe, let's look at Canada, let's, wherever.
Let's go back to Johnny and Chrissy's daughters first. So Anna Pohl's arguably one of the top 3 players in the world for her age. If you watch the World U18s, which I did, she and Tala Hansen and Lainey Ganetz were 3 of the best 5 players in the world. If you ask me, they were unbelievable to watch. The fact that you're right, Jess, that her going to Wisconsin was eye-opening. And eye-opening to the program. It should have been eye-opening to the athletic director. It should have been eye-opening to everybody. She should have been a Gopher, and it wasn't the lack of the Gophers trying. Their staff did everything in their human power to get her to attend school here. I think it was winning. I mean, Anna. Emily's been a winner her whole life, so is Anna, for that matter. Has been a winner her whole life, and Johnny's done a great job developing talent at Hill Murray. I think if Nadine turns them down, I think that's the next place they turn. Johnny's played here. Christy's played here. They've proven it at Hill Murray. They have nothing more to prove at Hill Murray. They're going to win 5 more state championships. Lucy's in 8th grade, I think. They're going to win, and they will surround Lucy. They'll surround Anna. They'll obviously surround Emily with talent. They'll do the same thing at the University of Minnesota, and they'll be able to bring all 3 of their daughters there, and they'll be able to surround talent with them, and they'll be right back on the map as a winning hockey program next year.
Yep.
That's how much strong I feel about Johnny being head coach. If they cannot get Nadine to come here, she's choice 1A in my opinion, and Johnny and Chrissy are choice 1B.
Yeah, I think that was most people's criticism of the news is going, okay, well, yeah, I mean, you obviously want the program to be, winning titles recently, but it's kind of, we all said in our group chat, like, well, who are they replacing him with? It's good to want to change and to be winning, but like, aside from Nadine and, maybe the polls and a few other kind of fringe names, like, there's really not a whole lot of high level options right now that would be a good fit for it.
So here's a quick story. Sydney and you and I were in Madison for the U18 Worlds in 2022,
Yeah,
right? They had Layla Edwards, Kirsten Sims.
all
They
the
had
really big
all
names.
all the best players on the U18 World team. Was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, they're good, they're good. And then we had Ava Lindsay and Madison Kaiser, but the rest of them were all Wisconsin players.
Yeah.
And that was the time it hit me. I'm like, the Gophers have no chance of beating these guys in the next few years because they have all these players. Plus, they have this person called KK Harvey coming back from the Olympic team that had just played in Pyeongchang. I'm like, I don't know. I can't see how the Badgers can lose.
Yeah, it's been one of those things where voting for the Patty Cavs, I'm not this year, but in years past, it's like it could literally be all
All
Badgers
of
in the
them.
finals every like year, it seems like. Um,
O'Brien,
it's
Lacey
tough.
Eaton, Layla Edwards,
Yeah,
all of
there's
them.
so
Yeah,
many.
we saw them all in Madison and was like, well, this is going to be a train wreck for the
Yeah,
WCHA.
yeah, 100%. So I don't know. I feel like everybody's kind of on the same page of like, it has to be Nadine, right? Right?
Well, I think we're going to
And
just leave it at that. And I
yeah,
gave you a nice alternative. You
yeah.
guys have any alternatives, fun alternatives other than
Because I
what
feel
I've
like
thrown out
any
there?
left field picks, obviously, I know a lot of people just speculating or throwing out, obviously maybe Natalie Darwitz is in the conversation or some other
Is
people
that
like that. But I feel
is
like
Natalie
any
Darwin
other,
is Natalie Darwin still in that conversation though? That's what I
I
wonder.
don't know, just people were throwing her name out. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
even something that
she's
would be,
obviously a legendary player.
yeah,
She's been an assistant coach at the program, but you look at her exits from a few jobs, and
yeah, don't know if
it
that's
hasn't
even
been
an
good.
option. Yeah,
And it's been weird too. I mean, like she was with on Frost staff for 2 years, and quietly exited, and nobody really said much about why she was let go or any of that. She takes over the Minnesota Frost as their first general manager, leads them to the title, gets them playing in Xcel Energy Center at the time, all that, and then as soon as the parade is done, she's
Jeez.
out.
yeah,
So there's
Well,
just been so much
Never
but
understood that.
it was a
weird
weird
circumstance.
it was a weird year. So I'm going to give you the facts. Facts are she left the program the same day that they were off having her resign. So she walked in with a resignation, and they were going to let her go, and it was a stare down as to what was going to happen. So there was no love lost between the athletic department, Brad, and Natalie. So that was kind of the first bridge that was burned, and then she took the Hill Murray job. Do you remember that?
yeah.
Oh, that's right. She had
Before
She
that
the
took the Hill
polls,
Murray
right?
for
job,
a week and a half.
and
Yeah.
she and Chrissy and Johnny hired her there, longtime friends, best of buddies, and was there for a couple months, and then got the PWHL Minnesota job, and then burned a bridge. She seems like there's been a succession of bridges burned by Natalie. As far as a coach, it's funny when she was going through this transition to all these programs, we were talking a lot. We were on the phone, we were texting, and she said to me something that I thought was true and really interesting. She goes, I think it would be great if there was more women coaches like Nadine. She even pointed at Nadine because and myself and female coaches who could really spice up college hockey. I'm like,
Yeah,
boy, would Nadine and Natalie spice things up really good. It would make college hockey interesting. I agree with Natalie on that front, but I don't think she's got another bridge to cross at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I wonder. I
yeah,
did get a great line when the rumor came out that Brad Frost was going to hire Natalie Darwitz as an assistant. I'm kind of chasing the rumor, and I texted Brad and said, can you confirm this? And he called me. He was kind of mad. He's like, where did you learn this? I said, Brad, I'm a reporter. This is my job. I learned this stuff.
Right.
And he quietly confirmed it, but he said, "I'd appreciate it if you wait until the press release comes out." I did. I'm not going to be a jerk about
Yeah.
any of this stuff. But it was funny. At about the same time, and remember, Natalie Darwitz was coaching at Hamlin, the women's program there, doing a great job. Took them to the Frozen Four, a program that
Yeah.
hadn't won a conference title for 100 years, and did a great job at that level. But I got a text from another coach in the women's MIAC, texted me and said, "Is it true Natalie Darwitz is going to Minnesota?" I said, "It looks like that." "Yeah, why?" And this coach said, "Good. It's no fun trying to recruit against her." If
Right.
if you're a D3 level kid and you're looking at a MIAC school to go to, playing for Natalie Darwitz, who's one of the legendary names in women's hockey in Minnesota, is a pretty
She's a
easy choice. Yeah.
she's a no holds barred coach. I mean, when they had their Frozen Four, Final Four at St. Thomas. So I went over to cover it, and you at St. Thomas, you can stand right next to the bench. And I was hearing things that she was making me blush. I'll just say that the way she was, pushing her players to succeed, and I'm like, I think that's what they kind of need. They might need that at the University of Minnesota.
I mean,
But I
Yeah, go
feel
ahead.
like just too many bridges have been burned there.
I feel like this is kind of like Tony when you and I talked on this pod last year when all the North Dakota stuff was going down of we can come up with all these names, but there's really not a very long list of people that are going to appease the fans and the alumni and the donors and get everybody excited because you don't want to bring in a name that everybody just is meh about. You got to bring in
Some
an
excitement.
exciting person that's going to get everybody hyped up. If you announce somebody kind of out of left field, even if they're a really great choice, people are not going to be excited about it if it's not an exciting name. So the list is
And I
very
thought that
short.
I thought, sorry to catch up, but I thought Dane Jackson was kind of a boring hire. But they brought in Bryn
Yeah, but
Chiswick, and they brought in a team. They had a plan, and I think
yeah,
it's obviously turned out really well.
yeah. So this is kind of, I feel like, a similar scenario of like, okay, you could go with a boring pick, but you might be dealing with an angry fan base for a while until they show some results.
All right, I think we've wrapped up the women's side of the dismissal. Any final thoughts on that before we jump over to
I'll,
Mariucci? We're going to leave Ritter and go over to Mariucci.
I'll just say this, just to kind of close the book on the Natalie Darwitz discussion. I do have somebody close to the Gopher program who said to me, and is friends with Natalie Darwitz, and I've always gotten along fine with Natalie. Who said, in the wake of her 2 years with Brad Frost, and then either resigning or being dismissed or whatever it was, this friend of hers said, we all told her, as much as she didn't like working with Brad, and there was all this friction, we all told Natalie, keep your mouth shut, and 5 years from now, it's probably your program to run. But it just, like to Tony's point about watching the way she coaches, not in her
Yeah.
nature. I mean, she's an
No.
outspoken person. She takes no BS from anyone. If you cross her, you're going to hear about it, and that it just sounds like the way things played out.
Is
Yeah,
that too much risk for the Gophers?
Pardon?
Is that too much risk for the Gophers per se?
It might be.
to hire Natalie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
a
think
good
that's part of
question.
these head coaching picks too, is like, do you want a boring but safe option of somebody who could come in and do a good job, a newer person? Do you want a well-respected
Right.
person? Do you want kind of a riskier go big or go home option?
Does the culture need to change per se? I would
Yeah.
argue no, not really, I would say.
Does the style of play need to change? That's one thing I heard from someone today,
Yeah.
is that these Gopher teams haven't been tough enough. Wisconsin's tough. Ohio State's tough.
Right.
Minnesota Duluth is tough. Gophers have this perception, other than Abby Murphy, that you don't play a tough enough game to compete in 2026 WCHA hockey.
I will
Interesting.
say this for those listening on YouTube or Twitter, and they want to send a question in to us about any of these topics, send an email to youthhockeyhub@gmail.com and we'll try to get to it. Peter has set the table with 9 million questions. You want to go to a couple of Peter's questions? I think this will set
Yeah.
the table for a lot of our stuff. So his question number one, how important is it, if at all, that Minnesota hires someone with previous ties to the program as opposed to an outsider like Barr or Frischweiler?
Talking about the men's thing?
Yeah, on the men's side.
Yes and no.
I don't think you can limit
Yeah.
I don't think you can limit yourself in 2026.
The only ties that Don Lucia had is that he was from the state of Minnesota, right, Jess?
Correct.
Maybe we just do a quick recap. Just do a quick recap on what happened with
let me just
Bob today.
answer that. Let me just answer that as quick as I can. I think it's hugely important, and we had talked about this. I've talked about this with many people. The last time the Gopher job was open, everybody said, "Well, why wouldn't you go out and get Nate Lehman at Providence?"
Yeah, because he was the hot ticket, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There's no way in hell you're going to hire a guy from Hockey East who's from Rhode Island or wherever to come in here. I mean, let's face it. We all live here. This is the most provincial state in America. You don't trust somebody unless they've got a cousin in Hibbing.
Correct. And on top of that, Jess, you'd have to learn who the Brainerd High School coach is.
Exactly.
And why it's important to talk to Kurt Giles and all the other things that go with living here. There's a learning curve to Minnesota.
You need the blessing from the Godfather, Lou Nanne.
Right.
There's just certain weird stuff that goes with being a coach at Minnesota, and you have to play that game. So, yes, the job is open, and I'm using the finger quotes, but there's a certain category that you have to fit. The farthest afield I could see them going is a guy like Ben Barr, who's at Maine and has done very well there.
Grew up in Duluth.
Happens to be from Duluth. Would that be enough? Would that be the Don Lucia tie that gets you in the door? I don't think
so. Yeah. I don't either. I think so. Go back to it. We a lot of shots were taken at Bob, and Bob's had a rough day today, but you got to give him credit. He did fill the building and when it was empty. So he should get credit for that. Number two, he needs to get credit for this whole Masich thing. It was unbelievable the things that he would do for John Masich. He would always bring the teams to Eveleth to practice. He had a great sense of the importance of hockey in Minnesota, where they would go play Ernie's team in Bemidji. He was very, 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 very intentional about playing UMD, North Dakota, Minnesota State. He did a great job at scheduling too, I thought. And then
he was my favorite thing, looking back at the Bob Motzko era. And man, is it weird to say that? It seemed like it was only 8 years ago when we were at his introductory press conference. Looking back at his era, though, I talked about this on another podcast I do. One of the cool things I always thought Bob Motzko did those couple of years that they won the regular season Big Ten title. You get a bye in the first weekend of the playoffs.
He went to Rochester, did inter-squad scrimmage.
He would get his team on a bus. He would get a hotel, in Rochester. He would take them down there. They'd spend 2 days. They'd do an inter-squad. They'd sign autographs. They'd have open practices. He made it like a road trip weekend. And, Southern Minnesota guy, Rochester.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
That was vitally important. And I get it. I went to Minnesota Duluth. Sydney went to St. Cloud State. It drives you bonkers if you're a Husky fan or you're a Bulldog fan or you're a Beaver fan, that here are the big Gophers coming into our neighborhood and flexing their muscle. But let's face it, they're the University of Minnesota. They cover the whole state, and he embraced that idea. So, that was one great thing he did. I mentioned this in my story for the Pioneer Press too. He reinvigorated the alumni base. And, Don Lucia is a friend. I'm not going to rip him. He won 2 national titles, which is more than I'll ever win. But one weird element during the Don Lucia era was the alumni, the Gopher hockey alumni, were not very involved with the program. Some of them openly disdained Lucia's program, wouldn't be involved with it for whatever reason. I don't agree with that. If you're a Gopher for life, no matter who the coach is. But that's one thing Motzko did as one of his first jobs was, we've got hundreds and hundreds of Gopher hockey alumni. We got to get them back involved. We got to get them buying tickets. We got to get them promoting the program. He did an amazing job of that.
It's funny. I remember one game I was with you, Jess, down in that adjunct press room / locker room. And we would go in there do a couple of questions. And I come out and there's Mike Carmen and Derek Peltier and all these ex-Gophers. I'm like, and they're bringing their little kids or their nephews or whatever into the locker room to show them around.
Yeah, Nick Angel and Jordan Leopold have been 2 of the guys really involved in, the hockey alumni golf outing that they have every summer. And
that thing has really turned into a wonderful thing too.
Yeah. So that was one thing he did. And, the timing is weird because I started with Forum Communications and the Rink Live right after Bob Motzko got hired. So I was there from day one of him running this program, and the crowds were bad. it's a 10,000 seat building, and if there were 5,000 people in there some nights, you were
You were
lucky.
lucky.
And within 5 years, and you went through the whole COVID mess. You get an asterisk on that because you were allowed 150 people in the building at one point. But I remember showing up for some of those Big Ten playoff games against Michigan or Penn State or whoever it happened to be. There would
During
be
the
a
state
line.
tournament.
Yeah, there would be a line, halfway to Al's breakfast to get into the student section. And as a matter of fact, the student section is those 3 sections on the one end. They actually expanded it to 5 sections of fans at one point because there was such a huge student demand. And it fell off a little bit this year just because they weren't as good, but he brought the fans back. So, yeah, you can criticize him forever that he didn't win a national championship, but 4 Big Ten banners, 3-time Big Ten Coach of the Year. That's all tangible stuff you will see hanging from the ceiling. But the fact that there are butts in the seats, the fact that the alumni is back involved, I mean, he really did, in some ways, revitalize the program.
I agree with that. I would also, one more thing I would add and I just want to go back. You talked about having all 8 years, and I probably went to 10 or 15 or 20 games. You were at many more than I do, but the game I remember most where I thought the place was the loudest, and you can definitely one up me on this one, but it was when Jackson Nelson scored the first goal of the game against Michigan, and they lost this game 4-3. But when he came out of the gates and scored, I haven't heard that place that loud in 20 years. It was an unbelievable atmosphere that night. Do you recall that night?
That was a Big Ten title game. Yeah, Jackson Nelson scored I want to say 20 seconds into the game. And then, of course, 30 seconds later, Michigan ties it up. So you talk about a buzzkill.
But
just
the
a great
explosion
game.
was great, though. It was a great hockey game.
There was Michigan's goalie, Eric Portillo, got penalized for knocking the net off the post. The place is going
11 times.
Yeah. There was a 5-minute major in the game. There, fans are pelting the ice with, debris at one point. And then Gophers are down by 3 with 5 minutes left. And you're like, okay, this one's done. Matthew Nyes just says, oh, how many goals do we need? What do we need? 3? Hang on one second. Pops in 2 goals, just bang, bang. Made it close. Michigan wound up winning the game. God bless them. Good for them. But yeah, atmospheres like that had gone away, and he brought that back. I'll say this too, from a media standpoint. People joked about, Bob would always bristle at my questions or whatever, but he respected the job I had to do. I respected the job he had to do. I was at one point the only independent media traveling with the team. And, we're in Columbus, Ohio one night, and he says, how did you get here? I said, Delta Airlines. And he said, we've got 10 open seats on our plane. Why don't you just ride with us? I mean, that made my job a lot easier to actually, be on the Gopher plane sometimes. I mean, so from that standpoint, from working with him, I've got very few bad things to say about, 8 years of covering Bob Motzko's teams.
You and I, Jess, of all people in our podcast, we never once called for Bob Motzko's head. We were like, it's one down year, give another year. This guy knows how to coach. Let him get his people in here. I think if anyone was surprised, the most surprised besides Bob was you and I. And I don't know about you guys, Ryan and Sydney. Were you guys surprised? Did we brainwash you enough that he was not on the hot seat?
Yeah,
Ryan, go.
I was totally convinced that he was at least going to play out his contract. And I mean, I have no reason to, not listen to you guys with that sense, with all your knowledge, especially Jess covering the team. But yeah, I mean, once I heard it was out there, I guess I wasn't too surprised with kind of the way things have been shifting over the last week or so, with the amount of people just, calling, not necessarily calling for his firing, but kind of asking, what's going on? Why, there's a lot of surface level people that I'm around that they didn't really have any idea that the Gophers were down this year. And I say, yeah, they won 8 to 10 games, and people are like, what? You know what I mean? So I'm like Jess said, I'm not too surprised in the end that it's going to end like this with the mutual parting ways, in the sense where they probably, they met and they just felt it was better now than, I mean, like you two said earlier, over the last couple of years, you felt like he was going to retire before he turned 70, right, Jess? And he's 62.
No, he's going to be 65 next month
Oh
or
wow.
next week. Next week, and that's
Yeah.
going to be weird too because I would, this was a tradition. We would be, in Worcester, Massachusetts, or some, Littleton, Colorado, someplace like that. No, excuse me, Loveland, Colorado, and I'd be texting him from my hotel room saying happy birthday. It was just a common theme, and this year, of course, not only will he not be playing in the NCAA tournament, but won't be coaching. I just did some math, by the way. Since 2018, now Ohio State and Penn State are the only schools in the Big Ten that have not made a coaching change. Think about that.
Oh,
I guess I would just, in short, I was initially shocked when I first heard the news, but now, now that it's kind of had time to settle and think about it, and the way the program was necessarily heading over the last couple of years, it did kind of feel like maybe we were anticipating a little bit of an off ramp, and maybe Mark Coyle saw that and just wanted to get ahead of things in a sense.
2 years left on his contract.
Yeah, go ahead.
That I wonder how much that played into it as well. So here's where it gets kind of interesting. If you looked at Mark Coyle's history and kind of the way he's done things, Tony, you follow Gopher sports. Let's turn the clock back 1 year. Remember this time in 2025? Remember us all pretending that we didn't know that Nico Medved had already been hired as the coach of the Gophers men's basketball team? He was coaching in the NCAA tournament with Colorado State, and we all had to pretend that, oh no, geez, I wonder, if the job. No, we all knew that Mark Coyle had already, made a deal there, and as soon as Colorado State got beat, that he'd be coming over to Minnesota, and he did, and he had good first year. Minnesota boy, checked all the boxes, all that. I wonder if there's not contact been made and a deal in place already for the next guy to coach Gopher men's hockey.
Interesting.
yeah.
We already know who that is, and I think once Augustana's chances go from 13% to 0%, he'll be on a plane coming back to the Twin Cities. I am so firm on this that I firmly believe that Garrett Radwine will be the next coach of the
Yeah, I
Gophers.
feel like we all everybody knows that he's the front runner, but I just gotta say, man, if that ends up being the finalized deal, how much that would suck if you're an Augustana fan. You get this awesome coach,
Oh
starts your
God, yeah.
program, and then immediately just heads right back where he came from. And I get it, I get it. Obviously, it's a big program. It's probably a big pay bump. Obviously, like you were just at Minnesota, so you have ties there. But just it would really sting if you're a Vikings fan, because obviously too, I'm sure like maybe it's not a ton of players, but I got to assume at least a couple players would follow him then to the U. And we were kind of joking. I know
Yeah.
Jess, you texted like, "Oh, is Josh Kotai now?" Like I don't remember if he's a
Junior or senior? He must be a junior.
He was a
like.
junior this past year, so he's got a year of eligibility
And
left.
obviously too, like they got so many high-level recruits right now, Augustana does. They got Mr. Hockey this year. So like are those guys gonna flip? Like
Henry
just
Lechner.
I would just feel really,
I couldn't
that'll
imagine. I couldn't
sting
imagine
for
him.
Vikings fans.
I couldn't imagine a Mr. Hockey winner committing to a different school and then switching gears and coming to Minnesota because of a coach other than Bryce Rodzinski. So
Yeah.
Yeah, like it would just I totally get it because I think everybody's on the same page of like that would be the most logical option, but just man, that would really sting for Augustana because obviously like, he's been there enough now that they kind of have the culture set, they've had success, but that'd be a big job opening up too now. So it's kind of like okay, well, that would also be kind of big news too of another vacancy then.
my
Good
favorite piece of,
job, too, by the way.
my favorite piece of trivia about Garrett Radwine, by the way, he and Bob Motzko have the same birthday.
Oh.
So I would always text him the same day and say happy birthday to both of you.
Strange thing.
So let's
Garrett
talk about
Ben Gordon. Okay.
let's talk about a couple others. I agree. Garrett Radwine is choice one, and I think the job will be his as soon as Sunday. But I think we would not be doing our due diligence. I mentioned Ben Barr, long shot, but he's done a nice job at Maine. He's from Minnesota, a lot of connections there. Pat Ferschweiler is a name I really like. Obviously won a national championship at Western Michigan. He's from Rochester, played a little bit at Minnesota Duluth when I was in school there, so he's got some local ties. I don't see him leaving Western right now for the biggest reason is they're about to open up a brand new
Yeah, they got a bunch of
arena
investment.
complex He's doing
Working.
it. Yeah. Yeah. And I see Pat Ferschweiler leaving Western Michigan for a head coaching job, but I think it's going to be in the NHL.
NHL, yeah.
I think he is destined to that, but he would be a great choice for this job. I think stand-up guy, great coach, done an amazing job, took Western to their first national title. So that's one. The other one I think we have to talk about is Grant Patolny. Former Gopher star, scored the game-winning overtime goal to win him a national championship in 2002. Was a longtime assistant coach under Lucia. Worked well, played for Motzko, lots of connections there. Now he got a head coaching job in college hockey at Northern Michigan. He was there, I want to say 5 or 6 years. Didn't get to an NCAA tournament. Came real close. He was in the CCHA championship game 3 times. Didn't win any of them. Then things ended badly. The program kind of imploded. They had, I want to say, like a dozen players go into the transfer portal one year, and they wound up making a change. He's coaching in the American Hockey League now, the Hartford Wolfpack, who is the New York Rangers team. But talk about a guy who checked a lot of boxes.
He left Northern Michigan.
Yeah,
he did not get fired.
I think you may be right, but it was under weird circumstances where, like, basically their entire team had transferred, and yeah. Weird deal up there. And I drove up there at one point. I met with Grant and Marquette. He showed me around the rink. I mean, seemed to like it there. But he's made it clear for a long time that the job he wants eventually is to be the head coach of the Gophers. I think that's a name you have to consider as well. So, if I were to rank them in who I think is going to get the job, Reboy number 1, Patolny probably number 2, and then, maybe a Ferschweiler gets offered it. Maybe you talk to somebody younger. I don't know where you go from there.
And Jess, Tony and I were talking on the phone earlier, and Tony also was bringing up, if you want kind of, well, it's not left field because everybody knows who this is, but would they ever consider like a Matt Cullen? I personally think that would be, if you're not a hockey person and you work in admin, you'd be like, well, he doesn't have a college hockey coaching job right now. But obviously that would be a big name, bringing a lot of prestige and stuff. And I know, Tony, you're like, well, he'd obviously be smart enough, obviously, to take that job. But I feel like some people have been throwing that name out there too.
Sure.
People say sometimes they throw these names out of left field, and you're like, yeah, whatever. But if you don't understand how smart and what a great hockey mind this guy has, and what I've seen him do at the youth level, the high school level, the off-season level, what he's doing at the junior level with the Fargo Force, this guy is absolute genius when it comes to hockey. And oh, by the way, he's got 3 extremely talented kids. And oh, by the way, they've all played at the program, or 2 of them have played at the program, or one will go there now. He knows this age of kids better than anybody as far as what they can do and what they cannot do. His team, he brought a team, the Blue Ox team, out to Detroit or wherever it was last year in the national championship, won a national championship. I remember one year when he was coaching a Bantam AA team for Moorhead, and they lost in double overtime to Edina. It would have been the Mason West group. The group through all seniors this year. And somehow Brad Soderberg was in the box and said, hey, you want to do the trophies? Hand out the trophies? And then no one because they lost in double over, no one from Moorhead wanted to come get the trophy. So Matt was the head coach. He walked up, and I handed him the trophy and said, I don't think I've ever seen you finish second before. This guy is an absolute winner. If they hired him, it would be crazy. People would be like, what is going on? There'd be a lot of criticism. But I promise you, that guy would not lose. They would be in the winner's circle very, very fast.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt it, but obviously that'd be a little bit.
Obviously, his dad was the longtime coach at Moorhead. Yeah.
I feel like the only tough thing with that is that when I was talking to Tony is like, if you're, I don't know how many people are on the board to try and make this decision or are influencing it, but if you're not a hockey person and you don't know Matt Cullen's name, do you look at the head coaching resume and you're like, well, he's not currently coaching in college or junior. I don't know who's all a part of involved in that, so maybe that'd be
your team.
Yeah,
he owns a junior team. I'm like,
I know he owns one, but if you're like, oh, well, we need somebody who's currently, a head coach in juniors or college, then obviously that'd be a different, I don't know. I don't know who's all kind of involved in the process of this decision.
I kind of think this job is beneath him. I actually think this job is beneath him.
No, like it very well could be, but if you're
it would be a robbery if we could get him. If the
You
Gophers
have to
got him
sell the
for 5
fort?
to 10 years,
No, I agree with you guys, but what if you're, a member of whatever I don't know if there's an advisory board or something that discusses
Yeah,
coaching
yeah.
hires and you don't
Hiring
know
board or
hockey,
something.
if you don't really pay attention and you're just like, who's this guy? I mean, I don't think that would be the case because I'm with you, Tony. Obviously, I think it would probably be a very good fit, but I'm sure there'd be some, I don't know, questions about it too.
I'm with him as being the hire is after Joey's done in 3 years, how much interest would he have being leading a
Yeah,
Division 1 hockey program
that's
while
true.
2 of his kids are playing in the AHL, the NHL.
Yeah, I don't
So
know. That's tough. Some things people are saying too, and I thought I'd just bring this up is, would they consider getting a GM, kind of like how North Dakota does now too? Like if they hire a new coach, would that kind of help a little bit from like recruiting perspective, maybe some of the noise, stuff like that? Like, do you think that could
happen.
possibly
Just the
be?
management of the NIL money is
Yeah, like do you guys think that
really
could
important.
possibly be in
I
play
do.
as well this offseason?
I
Because that
do.
could be
I
a big
really
thing.
do.
What about that role for Matt Cullen?
Yeah, that could be very interesting too. I don't know if that's even something he'd be interested in, but that'd be cool too.
When I know Bryn Chiswick is the GM, and I got to know Bryn pretty well over the last 10 years. And I talked to him about game day stuff. So what's going on with game day? He goes, I'm not even at the rink during game day. I'm in Western Canada, or I'm at the Blue Ox, or I'm in, some tier 1 event. My job is to know every recruit in the country in North America and get us the best players. And worry about personnel. I don't worry about
Exactly.
X's and O's and who's in the top 6. So I think I think Matt Cullen's role at the University of Minnesota. I
Yeah.
know he was going to be involved with Bob. Was going to be in a complimentary. What do they call that? What do they
Advisor.
call it? Advisor, coordinator, something like that. He would have been
Yeah.
involved with the program with those boys there.
Yeah, for sure. But
Since,
that could be
since,
something that changes things too, because obviously North Dakota's had plenty of success with that kind of
Yeah.
added role this year too. I feel like that'd be a smart move to maybe add something like that.
since we talk so much about Ohio State, Steve Rollick,
And
St.
then
Paul boy, Hill
nobody says
Murray.
anything to
Like he's from
You're
here.
yep, from here. Your sound is cutting
Point.
out, Tony. I'm sure
He
you're.
has he has 1 point in on the scale. I just don't
Well,
think
I
it's enough
mean,
points.
taking
He could get an interview.
taking an Ohio State program to the national tournament how many times? Yeah, I don't know. National champion player.
Like we said, it would be kind of funny if we just
Just
grabbed
saying.
both Ohio State coaches.
Yeah,
Take the
absolutely.
Gophers.
Go down to Columbus.
Phil Mariucci Arena.
Steve
Steve
Rollick.
Rollick.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, let's
I don't
face
think
it.
it would.
You're going to have to explain to people who Garrett Raboin is. You know,
Yeah,
I,
that's
I
true.
think
hockey people know who he is, but
Krabs has got a lot of personality and got a lot of he will draw in the fans.
can I tell you
I'm
my
convinced of it.
can I tell you my favorite Garrett Raboin moment? I mentioned those years where I was on the team plane. Now, Gophers fly Sun Country, and that's going to change obviously because Sun Country is going away. But they have a deal with Sun Country where they fly charter on these really nice Sun Country planes. It's a great setup. Most flights in the Big Ten are about an hour. It's about an hour to South Bend. It's about an hour to Michigan. It's about maybe an hour and 20 minutes to Columbus. Well, Penn State's a 2-hour flight. That's the long one. And one drawback, I don't know if this has changed, but at the time, Sun Country didn't have Wi-Fi on their planes. So in this weird world where everybody's connected to everything all the time, there's a 2-hour window there where you're just basically in the dark. Guys are playing cards. You're on a plane. So I'm on my way to Penn State, and this is 2022. This is during the Olympics. So Ben Myers is gone, Matthew Nyes is gone, Brock Faber is gone because they're all playing in the Olympics. I'm on the team plane, and the way it worked was Motzko always got the front row, and then the assistant coaches got the second row, and then me and Frank Mazzacco and some of the other media, Wally Shaver, those guys would have like third row, and then way to the back would be all the players. So 2 hours, we're in the air, nobody knows anything that's going on, and the plane lands, and everybody immediately turns on their phones. We're in State College, Pennsylvania, and Garrett Raboin, I hear like a yelp from the front 2 rows of the plane, like a good Yelp, like something good has happened. Okay. And I said, "Are you okay?" to Raboin, and he holds up his phone to me, and it's an Instagram post from Logan Cooley, and all it has is Goldie Gopher's face on it. And he looks at me and says, "Get to work." So immediately, I go to my hotel room. I'm hammering out a story on biggest recruit in the country commits to Minnesota.
Damn, too.
Yeah, yeah, and you remember at the time Logan Cooley had originally committed to Notre Dame, and then started to have some second thoughts. This is in February when this happened, this change of heart. But the story is,
likely enough, is he also they had just played here.
yes, the story was he's with the under-18 team. They play the Gophers in early January. It's like 1,000 below zero in Minneapolis. But Jimmy Snuggerud takes him for a walk around the campus and shows him all this cool stuff and says, "If you want to come here, we could do some cool stuff together." And a couple weeks later, Logan Cooley, despite the weather, says, "Yeah, okay, I'll be a Gopher for a year." And it went pretty well.
4 or 5 goals a night, as opposed to Notre Dame, where you might score 1 and be stuck there for 3 years. So it was a good move for Logan Cooley and Jimmy Snuggerud.
I like Jeff Jackson, but think about what he could have done with Logan Cooley and Brock Faber, both of whom were committed to Notre Dame at one point and switched to Minnesota.
Nice job at Notre Dame. I got to tip my hat to them, but man, they were not an offensive juggernaut.
No.
Yeah.
Go from here on this. Do you want to go to a couple more Peter questions?
Yeah, let's go.
Sure.
Let's see here, Peter. Where do you go here? They had some good ones here. Question 3: on a scale of 1 to 10, how aggressive does a new coach have to be in recruiting the CHL?
Ooh.
I feel like it's not a requirement, but I feel like it's something fans probably are going to want to see because that was kind of a lot of people's complaints of this year. So do I think they need to? No, but I feel like from a fan perspective, they're going to want maybe a little more.
You can't ignore it.
Yeah.
You just can't ignore it to that point, but I don't think you give it any more. I don't think you give it any more of your time than say any of the other leagues.
Scale of 1 to 10, 4.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10, and I'll say 10 just to make this show more interesting, is because right now, as of yesterday, it was 0, you guys. It was 0. It was a flat 0. It was like a middle finger 0. Like, no. So I would say you have to actually, like Ryan just said, you have to account for this league that produces NHL stars, first-round draft picks, and we've completely ignored it. That seems a little bit irresponsible to me.
I feel like that would probably be one of the talking points. And if they do interviews with potential coaches of going like, okay, you don't need to exclusively recruit those guys, but you're going to have to be, maybe a couple every year, just trying to get some of the top level talent out there.
I don't think Mark Coyle knows what the CHL is.
I don't know.
He probably doesn't even know.
Well, if they were smart,
knows
that's
what it is and knows the rules, but I think if you're going to do this right, I hate to be a copycat, but I think the Gophers need to copy North Dakota and have someone who's completely in charge of recruiting that animal up in Canada.
Well, maybe having a GM and adding that position maybe would be kind of the no-brainer then. Is like if you're getting a coach who doesn't want to be, maybe plugged into all that, that would probably be the no-brainer thing to do is add that position and then have that person be full-time scouting all the other leagues and kind of doing all that because I feel like that would take a lot of the pressure off of other people.
Any other follow-ups to that? Because I got more.
No, I think Sydney's dead on. I think you need to have a GM person, and maybe they live in Kamloops. I don't know, but yeah,
I can't imagine if
this is where the game is right now. You can't afford to not be in that pool.
Because I don't think if it does end up being Raboin like we think, I don't really think he's really recruiting a bunch of major junior right now either. And I don't know if those guys are super into Augustana necessarily, but like I don't know how much he would be, shifting his focus into that either. So yeah, maybe just a GM would solve a lot of these problems.
Before who killed Princess Diana? Question 5. Could the new coach or coaches benefit from associating more concentrated on hockey programs. They do have an associated AD concert. I'll remove that one. Number 6, we've already answered. Should head coach implement a modern GM? We've already answered that one. 7, Minnesota has rich tapestry of alumni, perhaps unrivaled by the best in the country. Does that help or hurt the new coach?
I don't see how that.
Alums have too much say in what happens inside the program.
I don't see how that could be a negative. I mean, the support that this program has, the history that this program has, the facilities this program has. You're as good as it gets right here.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Raboin pick too, I mean, if he's end up being picked, he would already know about it. He was just at Minnesota. So like he would already be familiar with the environment and the pressure from, alumni, fans, donors, all that stuff. He'd already know about it. So that kind of even leads further to why that would definitely be the front runner number one, because he'd already know.
And we've kind of touched on it a little bit, is how do you navigate bringing players from your previous program? How do you navigate that without you don't want to push out too many players in the program, but I would highly encourage, after what I've seen this season and last, that the goaltender named Josh Kota would be a great addition.
Well, I mentioned that. You've got the top goalie in the CCHA and Josh Kota. You could bring him in, and then you've got Carter Casey coming in, a year later? I mean, that could put them in a really good position. We're getting way ahead of ourselves because obviously.
Yeah, I mean, this is getting way ahead of ourselves. But I mean, if you look at the Minnesota State Wisconsin situation, you could kind of do a similar thing of like, okay, well, you're at a CCHA program. You're probably not going to want to bring, and this isn't a shade to any of those guys, but you're probably not going to want to bring that whole roster. Cherry pick your favorite guys or the most talented guys, bring them over. And then obviously, too, I'm sure a bulk of the recruits would flip. Maybe not necessarily all of them, but probably a large portion, I'd assume, of committed guys would end up flipping. I mean, I don't really know necessarily, but that would definitely be a lot of big question marks, which we'll see next week or the week after if we get any portal movement too. Because I know, Tony, you're talking to me, you're like, what does this mean for the transfer portal? Because, if Raboin comes back, do the Gophers lose anybody? Do they not lose anybody? Or do a couple guys decide they want to try elsewhere? I mean, I feel like we've talked about this on previous Twitch pods of like, we don't think anybody would be super excited to jump ship. But you never know, because most of the Minnesotans are going to be just excited to be playing at Minnesota, but you never know.
Yep.
You never know.
There'll be very few players leaving the portal if a new coach were coming in. I think if Bob were there, I think there were going to be a few players leaving the program.
Interesting. So maybe there's less if they do a coaching change. That's kind of funny.
Speaking of the portal, I got to give a quick shout out, and this is why the portal works, and this is why it's a good thing, despite the fact that traditionalists will say, "Oh my God, it's ruined college hockey." This is why it works. Charlie Strammel today was named one of the 10 finalists for the Hobey Baker Award. If you remember Charlie Strammel when he started at Wisconsin, it was a mess. Just didn't fit there. Now under the old rules, he would have had to sit out a year, go through all these hoops, all that. Instead, he goes in the portal. He finds a place that fits for him at Michigan State. He's a Hobey finalist there. He's probably going to be a member of the Minnesota Wild by the time the playoffs start, I would think. This is why you have the portal. This is why it works. It gives the players this freedom to find a situation in a school and a coaching staff and all of that works for them. And there's a success story.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of the portal giving athletes freedom, but I think the portal has also got to be a great excuse for coaches to wink guys out the door. Like that's where it gets a little bit dirty, where we promise you 4 years and after 2 years it's not quite working out. They don't want to spend the extra 2 years developing them. They'll bring in another hot shot, a kid from juniors to replace you. That's where I'm a little bit nervous about the portal.
You're absolutely right. That's a fact. That's a fact of life in 2026 college hockey.
That way, when you had the transfers, they were mostly committed for 4 years, whether they were good or they were bad, and that part of the game has just gone away a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other thoughts or takes on the day? Because it's been a crazy 2 days.
I said this on the phone with you. I'm just going to throw out my crazy Gopher women's hockey idea.
Okay.
I want it on the record.
Okay.
You're looking for somebody new, somebody different, somebody who would excite people about Gopher women's hockey. The biggest name in the history of American female hockey has said she has played in her last Olympics, and it's pretty clear that her playing career is winding down.
Yeah.
Already going crazy.
What would you think if next week Hillary Knight is named the head coach of the Gopher women's hockey team?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that would certainly be out of left field, but hey, I would
You're telling me
take it.
they're telling me there's a
Parking
16-year-old
lot.
talented
That's the parking lot. That's
I was
female
not
gonna
even
hockey
left
say
player.
field.
she's getting married. That she is
They,
she's
she
sailing
has
into
owned
the
a house in
sunset.
St. Paul. I'm not sure if she still owns it. She's obviously got ties to the area, well known. And you're telling me there's a 16-year-old girl in America with a hockey stick in her hand that wouldn't want to go play with Hillary Knight as their coach?
Oh yeah. I mean, recruiting would be a cakewalk.
Oh gosh.
Now here's
No,
two
it's
here's
not
two
that
reasons
easy.
here's two reasons why it won't happen. Number one, Mark Coyle's got a history of hiring a superstar who had never coached before. And how did Lindsay Whalen work out for him? Didn't work. Okay.
A
Biggest
legend.
biggest name in Gopher women's basketball hockey, history, hadn't coached before. She took over the program. It didn't work. Okay. So he got burned there. Number two, if Hillary Knight's going to be a head coach in women's collegiate hockey, we all know where it's going to be. It's a team about 4 hours to the east of here, in Madison, Wisconsin. So even if she did agree to come here, there would be this perception that she's just waiting for Mark Johnson to retire and then she's going to switch schools. So, but there's my pie in the sky idea.
Okay.
I go, there's my daughter. Just popped in. Just
Do
had
you
to
want the
get in.
job?
Doing the pop in.
Olivia wants the job at the U. Yeah, I'm going to be the girls coach. Yep, women's coach, not girls. Still teaching here.
I was gonna say I would be shocked. I'm gonna say the Gophers are gonna make the safe decision on both ends, but then again, I did not see them Mark firing either of these coaches about a week ago. So I guess anything can happen.
I will say this was an eventful day for me. I did not expect any big news. I was getting ready to get my toddler down for a nap. I ended up falling asleep too. I woke up 15 minutes later to about a billion notifications on my phone. And you know that feeling when you just wake up and you have no idea what's going on? I was like, oh my God. Because my phone was just exploding. And I was like,
It's
oh,
the randos. It's the randos.
oh
I
my
got one.
God.
I got one today. This is how people
Text,
treat
Twitter
me. This is how.
notifications, I'm like, we were just talking about this of like, why does breaking news always drop when you're doing something else or not paying attention?
Drops
'Cause I'm
during the
just
state
like,
high school hockey tournament every
I
year. Like, wait,
literally,
huh?
I fall asleep for 15 minutes and I get just an insane amount of notifications and everybody like, did you see that? Did you see? Yeah, I'm seeing it now. I'm
Yeah.
seeing it now.
When I was a young reporter, I remember a kind of veteran reporter said the great thing about this job is you're always one phone call away from having your whole day ruined.
Yep. Just you never know when you're gonna get a message about just insane anything. You
So
know.
let me just reiterate. I had a conversation with Brad Frost yesterday. He was upset. The word he uses, he was gutted. It was 26 years he was with the program, 19 years as the head coach. That's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow at 52. And I said, I look forward to your next chapter. I have nothing but good things to say about Brad Frost and dealing with him. Great person, great coach, fantastic with the media. He's a man of faith. He said that. He believes that there's a plan for him, and whatever that is, he'll wait to find out what it is. And same thing with Bob Motzko. I said it before, but I'll say it again. Just always helpful with me. Yeah, we butted heads sometimes. I did my job. He did his job. My job was to get information. His job sometimes was to keep that information away from me. There was a natural conflict there. But if I see him across the bar, I'll send him a Bud Light and we'll smile. And I got nothing but good things to say about him as well.
Yeah, likewise. I got the same to say about both coaches. They were great additions to the university and the university community. I hope to see them around the rink soon. I'm really looking forward to what's all going to transpire here in the next 1 to 17 days. I don't think it's going to be 17, but we've seen these things drag out before. And I wouldn't be surprised if it does drag out, but like you said, I think it could be a Miko Nedved situation where as soon as Augustana's out of the playoff contention. He'll be on one of those fancy airplanes headed back to the Twin Cities, and
Well, I think we'll
same for
know
Nadine.
I think we'll know for sure the set, uh, all the winners and stuff by Saturday night. I think the last conference games are Saturday night, right? So the field should be, Augustana would know by the final buzzer of the
Yeah,
final game Saturday.
and how
Um,
this works is it all works through their attorneys and their agents, right?
yeah.
All of this works out that way. And I've been lucky enough to know a lot of the head coaches, agents, and attorneys. That's how I get a lot of my information about who's coming and going and finding out these things really quickly. I had some guy go, "You're just wishful thinking that this is Red One." I'm like, no, it's actually some really good sources that I've seemed to pick up over the years. The point of it being is like we're gonna know before it's before it's inked on the deal, we're gonna know who the coach is. And I think it's gonna happen really quickly. But
And
we
Mark,
gotta wait for it to end. We have to wait for the playoffs to be determined for the men's, and then the national championship for the women's to end this weekend.
So what
Mark
you're
Coyle
saying,
Mark Coyle's got a media availability on Monday. I
oh,
think he will announce one, if not both, of these coaches at that point.
wow.
I think so too, Jess. I
So
think it's going to be done.
basically, what you guys are saying is I shouldn't do any activity where I'm away from my phone Sunday or Monday or anytime next week
Well,
because the minute I look away, there's going to be an important announcement
I will know on Sunday.
or
I
I'm going to get a
promise you, I will
news leak
know.
and then my phone's going to blow up. So I probably
Yeah.
should not take a nap during the middle of the day,
At one,
Sunday
about
through.
1 p.m. on Monday, I'm flying to Florida to cover the Wild playing the Lightning. So
What?
Oh no.
What'd you
I
say? What time?
about 1 o'clock on Monday,
Oh,
I'm flying
perfect.
to
That's
Florida.
that's
So
when
I
it'll be.
guarantee I will be somewhere over southern Wisconsin when we'll get the news of the new Gopher hockey coach. I'll get a text,
I
in
guess
Well,
the
I'm
Florida.
just
women's
gonna.
one, the women's news will probably be delayed because I mean, if it is going to be Nadine, or Nadine, she's playing in the Frozen Four, so that's
On
Friday,
Saturday.
Sunday. No, isn't
Oh,
it
it's Friday,
Friday?
Sunday?
I think it's Friday,
You're
Sunday.
right. I'll double
Usually it's
check
Friday,
that.
Sunday, I think. It was
I
last year, wasn't it?
Press
think you're
conference Monday.
right.
Either way.
So, I mean, they
And
could,
and
but that'd be a very quick turnaround because women's, I mean, they're still going. And, I'm not saying this to jinx anybody, but it could just be, the same. I haven't looked at the bracket. Could it just be Wisconsin, Ohio State again? I'm assuming yes.
isn't it
Yeah,
always?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's going to be that.
Okay.
You know what? Look,
Because then they have that.
it does not say,
And the women's
it
transfer
doesn't have
portal,
a
I think.
TBD on here. It's,
I think the women's transfer portal opens Monday officially, so I'm sure for coaches too, like if you're a head coach, you after the national championship game, however that goes, you're probably gonna have a lot of conversations with people Monday too.
And
Um,
to Tony's point about the agents, let's say Ohio State women lose on Sunday or win on Sunday, and 24 hours later, Nadine Mesereau is announced as the new coach of the Gophers. People will say, "Well, how could she make that decision that quickly?" Whatever. No, don't kid
it's
yourself.
already been done
They're
yeah,
they're talking to the agents are talking and
done
negotiating right
deal.
now.
Yeah,
You know,
now.
and then
Exactly.
once it's all over, once their seasons are over, then they'll say, okay, here are the offers. What do you want me? That kind of thing. That's when
they
the
probably
negotiation.
floated the idea over to them about a week or two ago when it
I
started.
had I
Yeah,
had one of them once. I won't say the coach's name, who says, "I want you to tweet it at this time, at this minute, literally down to the minute, 10:15 a.m. This is when I want you to tweet it." Okay. I'm like, whatever you say. And then the best is the people come at you. That's BS. It's not gonna happen. I'm like, okay, I'm pretty much sure this is gonna happen. I got the golden goose here. So when
I
these
did
things
have
come out, it's hilarious.
I did have someone very indignantly tell me on social media yesterday that Brad Frost wasn't fired. He just didn't renew his contract. Got news for you, folks. If they don't renew your contract, you're fired.
You're fired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way this works.
it's just a
And
polite way.
I think, let's be honest, Brad, Motzko was fired today. This was
Yep.
Bob fully expected to be the coach of the team next year.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on Twitch. I mean, I think Jesse, you were even talking about it. Like Bob would just stay there for a long time if he could, I'm sure. Like it's a
It's an
dream
easy
job.
job.
So I mean, they
It's a
say
great
mutually
job.
parted ways to sound nice, but that is very rarely, 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 rarely ever the actual case that happens.
I'm
Very
gonna
rarely.
I'm gonna quote Bob Motzko from 8 years ago too, by the way, because inevitably someone will ask, and I'm throwing out names at random, but someone will say, how could Pat Ferschweiler leave Western Michigan for Minnesota when he's got it so good there? Or how could Garrett Raboyne leave Augustana for Minnesota when he's got it so good in Sioux Falls and the new rink and blah, 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 blah. Bob Motzko said this 8 years ago because he had it good at St. Cloud State.
Yeah,
He had taken them to the Frozen
they were
Four.
cooking.
He was won NCAA titles. And remember that the first Brett Larson team that was fully recruited by Bob Motzko, that was a really, really flippin' good team. I mean, that's a team that could have won a national title, no question. And Motzko walked away from that. But what he said at the time was, you get one kick at this can in your life. You know, you get one time that this opportunity comes around, you got to take a swing at it. And he did, and he won a lot, and he did great things for the program. And that's going to be the answer Monday or whenever we find out who the new Gopher coaches are for both of these programs.
I think that's a good way to end it.
Thanks,
Jess.
Good way to end it.
Thanks, Sid. Thanks, Ryan, for helping us put this thing together. Thanks to Greg Tinty too. This whole setup was cool. We could do this, and it would be there's 500 and some people watching right now, and if it wouldn't
we're
be
all at
happening,
the rink.
I can't believe we all got
at the rink too.
Yeah.
We have our own little corner at the rink.
I'm the only one who has fans. You know,
Yeah,
you guys are all in a big empty rink. I actually have fans there.
We don't have any fans. Only Jess has fans.
It's incredible. That's incredible. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you Tuesday. We'll record Tuesday. I'm sure on that Tuesday recording, we might have multiple things to talk about again. So, well, we'll have a tournament to talk about. Will we have one or two head coaches to talk about too? We'll tune in. We'll see you guys Tuesday. Have a good weekend, you guys. Take care.
Later.